This is HFY Vanguard. From Earth's soil to the edge of the universe, humanity rises. And our story begins here. The memorial service was short, but its brevity did not soften the pain. Atria stood stiff and unyielding in her matte black combat suit, the ceremonial uniform that felt less like armor and more like shackles today. In front of her hovered the holographic projection of Krell, her partner, her comrade in arms for 5 long years, now reduced to nothing more than a shimmering image floating above an empty casket. The projection displayed him as he had been in life, calm, methodical eyes sharp with disciplined posture, steady with unshakable confidence. It was the way she wanted to remember him, though her mind was haunted by what little remained after the explosion fragments of his armor, the shattered remnants of his personal commune device. There was no body to mourn, no remains to lay to rest, only silence, memory, and grief. The ceremonial chamber aboard Orion 4 station was filled with dozens of officers, soldiers, and staff. Their uniforms polished their faces, composed into masks of solemn respect. The names of the fallen were whispered in hushed tones, Krell's among them. But for Atria, the world felt narrowed down to just herself in that ghostly hologram. The silence between heartbeats was unbearable, as though the entire galaxy had stopped spinning to force her to acknowledge his absence. Lieutenant Commander Atria. The sharp, gravelly voice of Captain Dorn pierced her fog of grief. She blinked, turning slightly toward the reptilian officer whose scales shimmered faintly under the artificial lighting. His tone was neither gentle nor cruel. It was practical, as though even in a memorial service duty refused to wait. "My office, now." Atria's jaw clenched. She gave one curt nod, her white braided hair brushing against her armored shoulders as she turned away from the projection. She did not look back, for she knew if she did, she might falter, and faltering was a luxury she would not grant herself. The reinforced plates of her combat suit felt unbearably heavy as she walked out of the hall. Her forearm display flickered with Krell's last transmitted vitals, still flatlined, still frozen in the moment she had lost him. She hadn't been able to reset it. Every time she saw it, she told herself it was a reminder, never again. Orion 4 station pulsed with life around her. The curved corridors thrummed with the energy of over 10,000 personnel from across the galaxy. Engineers hustled past with crates of equipment. Pilots in flight suits joked as they passed each other. Officers exchanged clipped orders as though the universe hadn't just taken someone irreplaceable from her. To them, the station was alive, a humming artery of the Interstellar Special Forces 7th Division. To her, it felt cold, impersonal, and indifferent. And then there were the humans. Their presence had become impossible to ignore. Barely a few decades ago, they had been unknown to the galactic stage. Now their adaptability, their tenacity, and their maddening refusal to die when logic dictated they should have been long gone had earned them rapid promotions across every branch of the ISF. Where Atria saw recklessness, others saw ingenuity. Where she saw insubordination, others saw bravery. And where she saw arrogance, others saw confidence. She despised them. Humans were unpredictable, emotional, reckless. They improvised when they should have followed protocol. They gambled when the stakes demanded caution. And yet somehow they survived. That infuriating quality had elevated them to equal footing with species who had been part of the interstellar order for centuries. Krell had not been like that. Krell had been methodical, precise, predictable, in the best possible way. He had been a partner she could rely on in the darkest of missions. Now he was gone, and the galaxy, cruel as always, had already decided she would not be left to grieve in peace. The pneumatic hiss of Captain Dorn's office door announced her arrival. Inside, the captain sat behind his desk, his scaled features as unreadable as ever. But it wasn't the captain that made Atria's stomach twist into knots. It was the figure standing at attention beside him. Tall, broad-shouldered, clad in a dark tactical suit, bristling with utility straps, biometric sensors glowing faint red across the chest. Human. Lieutenant Commander Dorn began without preamble. "This is Commander Reed Blackwood, transferred from the Arcturus Division. He will be your new field partner effective immediately. The words hit her harder than any physical blow. Sir, she said sharply, forcing her voice to remain, even though fury churned beneath it. With all due respect, I don't need this. This isn't a request. Dorn cut her off with reptilian finality. Regulations are clear, no solo operations after a partner casualty. The 7th needs its best officer back in the field. That means you, and that means with a partner. The human extended his hand toward her. Looking forward to working with you, Lieutenant Commander. Your reputation precedes you. His voice was deep, resonant, tinged with an accent she couldn't quite place. His face was sharp, angular, but not harsh. His eyes, damn them, were steady and intelligent, almost gentle. Atria didn't move. She let the silence stretch until his arm lowered, though she caught the brief tightening around his eyes. He didn't push further. When's our first assignment? She asked flatly. Tomorrow, Dorn replied, sliding a data pad across his desk. Abandoned starport in the Cygnus sector. Crimson Syndicate has laced it with explosives. You'll clear it for repurposing. The Crimson Syndicate. The very name made her blood run cold. They had been responsible for the smuggler vessel explosion that had killed Krell. To be sent against them now felt like reopening a wound that hadn't even begun to heal. I'll prepare the equipment, Blackwood offered smoothly. Standard loadout plus bomb disposal kit. Affirmative. Dorn nodded. Dismissed. Atria turned sharply on her heel, refusing to give either man another word. Yet she could feel the human's eyes on her back, heavy as a shadow she couldn't shake. In the corridor, the inevitable happened. Lieutenant Commander T called his footsteps, quickening behind her. She stopped abruptly, pivoting to face him, her voice like acid. Listen carefully, human. I don't want a new partner. I don't need a new partner. And I especially don't need some Arcturus hotshot who thinks he can replace Krell. Blackwood's expression didn't falter. His voice remained maddeningly calm. I'm not here to replace anyone. We have a mission, and I'd prefer we both return alive. Stay out of my way, she hissed, and follow my lead. I've been clearing Crimson Syndicate traps since before your species figured out faster than light travel. A flicker of amusement, quick as lightning, danced in his eyes. I'm older than I look, Lieutenant Commander. It's Atria. She snapped the words, slipping out before she could stop them. Her chest tightened at the familiarity, at the vulnerability she hadn't intended to reveal. And I don't care how old you are, just be ready at 600 hours. She stalked off, fury burning under her skin, but underneath the anger lurked something more dangerous, unease. His restraint had been unexpected. Most humans would have risen to her hostility, fought back, revealed their arrogance. He hadn't. Later in the solitude of her quarters, Atria stared at the holographic display of Krell's belongings. His ceremonial blade, the collection of rare minerals he had gathered from missions, the hollow recordings of his family. 5 years of partnership, laughter, and survival now reduced to objects that would be shipped back to his homeworld like relics. She opened Blackwood's file on her console more out of spite than curiosity. His service record was spotless, commendations for bravery lined one after another. Former tactical instructor, specialist in explosive ordnance disposal, fluent in 12 alien languages, including her own, an impossible feat for most humans. No listed next of kin, no attachments. It was neat, too neat. Closing the file, she leaned back, arms crossed, heart heavy. Tomorrow she would be working with a human, a reckless, unpredictable human. Her lips pressed into a thin line. She would not let him get her killed. She would not let him be another ghost she had to carry. This time she would be prepared for anything. Sleep never came. Hours after the memorial, Atria lay on her bunk armor, stripped away, yet still feeling its weight. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Krell's face, not the clean holographic image from the ceremony, but the fragments she had been forced to identify after the explosion, scorched armor plating, bloodied shards of his commune device. She replayed the moment again and again, as if by reliving it, she could alter the outcome. But Krell remained gone, and in his place tomorrow would stand a human. She exhaled sharply, sitting upright. The recycled air of Orion 4 felt stale in her lungs, heavy with grief. She checked the chrono past 0300 hours. 3 more hours until dawn cycle lighting would bathe the station in artificial sunlight. Waiting in darkness felt unbearable. Atria decided to walk. The corridors were quiet at this hour, dimmed to half-light for night cycle. Only the hum of life support systems and the occasional patrol echoed through the metallic halls. She let her boots carry her without aim until she reached the memorial garden. The garden was small by planetary standards, but precious aboard a military station. Dozens of species had contributed flora from their worlds, each plant thriving under customized lighting arrays. Vines from Zyros hung beside Terran roses. Crystalline stalks from Rial glimmered faintly in the dark. It was a fragile oasis of life and color amidst steel and discipline. At the center stood the memorial wall, its polished black surface inscribed with the names of the fallen. Krell's would be etched there soon. The thought twisted her stomach. She slowed, realizing she wasn't alone. A man knelt before the wall, head bowed, shoulders squared even in stillness. His civilian attire, a fitted black shirt and dark trousers, seemed simple compared to the polished uniforms usually worn here. In the low light, he looked less like a soldier and more like someone stripped bare of pretense. Atria almost turned away, unwilling to intrude, but curiosity kept her feet rooted. "Couldn't sleep either?" she asked softly. He didn't startle. Instead, he glanced over his shoulder, eyes catching the dim glow before returning to the wall. "Lieutenant Commander, no sleep, and I have a complicated relationship." His voice was the same as earlier, deep calm, but stripped of the professional formality. Here it carried something else. Weariness, maybe. She stepped closer, her eyes drawn to the object he had placed at the wall's base, a small metal disc bearing the insignia of Arcturus Division. "Friend of yours?" she asked, though the answer was obvious. "Several." His reply was quiet-weighted. "My old squad, ambushed by Draxian separatists 3 years ago. I was the only survivor." Atria felt something she hadn't expected: empathy. It stirred uncomfortably in her chest. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice losing its usual edge. "As am I." "For your loss," he replied, finally rising to his full height. Even without armor, he was imposing, towering nearly a head above her. His expression remained controlled, but his eyes softened. Krell was well respected. His innovations are still studied at the Academy. His method during the Centauri hostage crisis, textbook perfect. Her heart stumbled. "That was our third mission together. He timed the breach exactly while I created the diversion. We worked in perfect synchrony." Blackwood nodded, the hallmark of an effective partnership. The words hung between them like a challenge. Could she ever replicate such partnership with him? Did she even want to? They fell into silence, broken only when her calming device chimed. The sound jolted her. She turned slightly away, shielding the screen. The message was brief. "Starport mission compromised. Crimson Syndicate aware. Trap set for ISF team. Verification code Krell 7729. Atria's blood ran cold. Krell 7729. Their private code. No one else should have known it. And yet Krell was dead. She snapped the device shut, her mind racing. Either this was an elaborate deception or someone was reaching out from the grave. Suspicion flared instantly. Blackwood, his sudden arrival, the timing of the mission, it fit too neatly. "Problem?" he asked, his tone neutral, but his gaze sharp. "Nothing important," she lied, quickly pocketing the device. "Station updates." His brow furrowed almost imperceptibly. She could tell he didn't believe her. At this hour, he pressed. "Some of us," she snapped, "are important enough to be bothered at all hours." For a moment, she thought he would push further. Instead, he laughed, deep, genuine, and startlingly warm. The sound sent an involuntary shiver through her, and she hated herself for it. "Fair enough, Lieutenant Commander," he said, amusement lingering in his tone. Then he added, "But if we're going to work together, we'll need trust, at least professionally." She met his gaze, finding it steadier than she'd expected. His eyes weren't mocking nor arrogant. They were serious, searching. It unsettled her. "Trust is earned," she replied, softer than she intended. "Then let me earn it," he said simply. Something shifted. Atria stepped back, reclaiming her distance. "Oh, 600 hours. Don't be late." She left quickly, but his words followed her like a shadow. The next morning, Atria arrived at the equipment bay half an hour early. If there was a trap ahead, she wanted every piece of gear inspected, every variable under her control. The bay was empty, its metal racks lined with weapons armor and mission kits. She set to work, her fingers dancing over scanners and seals. At the same time, she accessed a secure terminal, pulling up Blackwood's full personnel file. The summary she had seen before had been clean too clean. This time she dug deeper, bypassing layers of encryption with her clearance. The details were unsettling. He had survived dozens of high-risk missions deep in Draxian territory. He was trained in 17 combat disciplines, fluent in 12 alien languages including Lyrian, a notoriously difficult tongue. And his psychological profile stood out most of all: exceptional emotional regulation and cultural adaptability. Recommended for cross-species partnerships due to unusually high empathic intelligence for a human. Empathic intelligence for a human. It clashed with every prejudice she had held. Humans weren't empathic. They were brash, impulsive, driven by instinct more than understanding. Yet the records painted him otherwise. Her eyes narrowed. Records could be falsified. She turned to mission logs. The ambush that had killed his squad had been horrific experimental sonic weapons, liquefying organs, leaving no survivors but him. According to the report, despite his own injuries, Blackwood had carried back the bodies of his comrades and still completed the mission objective. His commanding officer had written remarkable resilience. Notably, resists revenge-seeking behavior common in humans. Commitment to protocol, unwavering despite personal loss. Before she could process the weight of that, a soft footstep broke the silence. She closed the file instantly, moving to stand by the equipment racks, just as his voice reached her. "You're early." She turned. There he stood, fully suited in tactical armor helmet, under one arm expression, calm. "I wanted to check the equipment myself," she said quickly. "Smart," he replied, nodding approvingly. "I did the same last night." "You don't trust the quartermaster?" she asked. "I trust everyone to do their job," he said, methodically inspecting a scanner. "But I verify when my life depends on it." Infuriatingly reasonable. She watched him work his movements, precise, efficient, professional. No arrogance, no wasted effort, just focus. Against her will, she felt a flicker of something she didn't want: respect. When he examined the bomb disposal kit, his brow furrowed. "It's been upgraded. New frequency scanners tuned to detect Crimson Syndicate's latest detonators." Her chest tightened. "How do you know their detonator technology?" His gaze met hers steady. "Because I wrote the analysis report after Krell's death. The fragments recovered from that explosion revealed new trigger mechanisms. Understanding them could prevent future casualties." Atria froze. Her partner's death reduced to fragments on a report, and this human had studied it. Her first instinct was anger. The thought of him dissecting Krell's final moments felt like an intrusion, a violation. Yet she couldn't deny the logic: someone had needed to analyze it to prevent the same fate from befalling others. She swallowed the lump in her throat. "Our transport leaves in 10 minutes, she said, changing the subject. "Then we'd better be ready," he replied calmly, securing the last of their gear. Together, they walked toward the hangar. The silence between them wasn't empty anymore. It was heavy with unspoken doubts, unasked questions, and the growing awareness that tomorrow's mission would test not only their survival, but the fragile beginnings of trust neither wanted to admit existed. And all the while, in the back of Atria's mind, one thought echoed louder than the hum of the station around her. The warning message. The code only Krell had known. Tomorrow she would find out whether it was a lie or a death sentence. The shuttle hummed with quiet efficiency, its engines vibrating through the reinforced hull as it detached from Orion 4 and slipped into the void. Atria sat strapped in her back, straight, her hands folded rigidly over her armored lap. Across from her sat Reed Blackwood, his helmet resting beside him, his dark eyes steady on the data pad in his hand as he reviewed schematics for the abandoned Cygnus starport. He had barely spoken since they boarded, and that unsettled her more than chatter would have. Humans were supposed to talk, to fill silence with bravado or humor. His composure, his quiet intensity, it was unnerving. She adjusted her scanner more for distraction than necessity. The glow of the display lit her blue features, reminding her of Krell. He would have leaned forward, murmured tactical probabilities, broken the silence with calm strategy. She bit the inside of her cheek, forcing herself not to drift into memory. "Atmospheric conditions," Blackwood said suddenly, his voice low but clear. He tilted the data pad toward her. "Minimal life support. Gravity functional. radiation pockets possible. She blinked, caught off guard by the sound of his voice. Noted. He studied her as if weighing something, then returned to his notes. His calmness annoyed her precisely because it mirrored her own. The pilot's voice crackled through the comms. ETA 2 hours to Cygnus orbit. Buckle down, long burn ahead. 2 hours. 2 hours with nothing to do but sit across from the human replacement fate had shoved into her life. She clenched her fists. The starport loomed in silence when they arrived. Once a hub of interstellar commerce, it now drifted like a carcass in the void, its docking arms twisted outward like the broken limbs of some long-dead insect. Emergency lights flickered weakly along the exterior, their crimson glow barely cutting through the dark. Looks like hell, the pilot muttered as the shuttle latched onto a docking ring with a metallic thud. The airlock cycled, releasing a hiss of stale cold air. Atria's helmet display registered minimal oxygen, low temperature, and faint traces of radiation enough to be uncomfortable but not lethal in their suits. She took point immediately, her scanner sweeping the concourse as the airlock opened. The vast chamber stretched before them, once gleaming walls dulled with dust, hollow panels cracked, and dead shadows dancing in the dim emergency lighting. "I'll take lead," she ordered, stepping forward. Negative Blackwood countered, voice calm but firm. "I have more experience with explosive ordnance. Initial sweep should be mine." Her spine stiffened. "This is my mission, my sector, my call." He didn't flinch. "And if you miss one trap, it's both our lives. You don't have to like me, Lieutenant Commander. But logic is logic." The worst part was, he was right. She knew it, and that infuriated her. "Fine," she snapped, "but I'm watching you." "I'd be disappointed if you weren't," he replied, lips curving into that infuriating half-smile. They advanced in formation, Blackwood slightly ahead, Atria covering his flanks. Their scanners pulsed quietly, searching for energy signatures. The first discovery came within minutes. Blackwood froze, raising a fist in the universal signal for halt. Atria stopped instantly, eyes narrowing as she followed his gaze. At the base of a support column barely visible against the dark metal, a thin ribbon of crimson thread fluttered faintly. "Tripwire," Blackwood murmured. "Classic Syndicate configuration." He crouched, examining it. His scanner confirmed the presence of an explosive charge embedded in the column. His hands moved steadily, pulling tools from his kit. "They've upgraded," he said after a moment. "Secondary trigger wired into the detonator. Disarm the primary and the secondary activates." Atria's eyes widened slightly. "Krell and I saw similar setups before. Took us an hour to crack the first one." "Good to know," Blackwood muttered, focus absolute. "This one's nastier." She watched him work every movement, precise, deliberate, calm. His gloved fingers manipulated wires and nodes with the confidence of someone who had done this countless times. Minutes stretched like hours. Then he exhaled softly, disarmed. He straightened, holding up the neutralized detonator before carefully storing it. "One down," he said. "Many more to go." Against her will, Atria felt the corner of her lips twitch, the faintest flicker of respect. She smothered it quickly. They moved deeper, finding device after device, each more sophisticated than the last, each neutralized with quiet efficiency. Blackwood never boasted, never smirked in triumph. He simply worked one trap at a time, as though dismantling death were a routine chore. By the fifth device, Atria found herself studying him, not just his skill, but the way he carried himself. His concentration was unwavering, his movements deliberate, his posture disciplined. He reminded her less of the reckless human stereotype she despised and more of Krell. The thought made her chest tighten painfully. At a junction leading toward the lower levels, it happened. Blackwood's hand shot out, grabbing her arm and yanking her backward. She spun, fury rising until she saw what he pointed at. A shimmer, barely perceptible. A strand of red light stretched across the passage at waist level. She hadn't seen it. If she had taken one more step, her throat went dry. "Thank you," she said reluctantly, the words foreign on her tongue. His hand lingered on her arm, warm even through her suit. Their eyes met, and for a heartbeat, something electric passed between them. "Partners watch each other's backs," he said simply. And for the first time since Krell's death, Atria believed it. The corridors grew darker as they advanced, emergency lighting giving way to shadows that seemed to stretch endlessly. Their scanners beeped softly, mapping the labyrinth of hallways. "We need to talk," Atria said, finally breaking the silence. Blackwood glanced at her expression, curious but focused. Bowed. She hesitated, then drew a breath. "I received a message last night. Said the mission was compromised. That the Syndicate knows we're coming. It used a code only Krell and I shared." Blackwood stopped dead, his gaze locked on hers, sharp with sudden intensity. "And you still came." She bristled. "I had to. Reporting it would have delayed the mission, and I didn't know who to trust." His expression flickered hurt, passing across his face before settling into calm understanding. "You thought it might be me." "I had to consider the possibility." He nodded slowly, and now I'm telling you," she said simply. The unspoken meaning hung in the air. She was beginning to trust him. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what it's worth, I've heard rumors of Syndicate infiltration in ISF ranks. It's why I requested this assignment." Her head snapped toward him. "You requested to be my partner." He hesitated, then nodded. "Your record is exceptional." And he paused. "I reviewed the data from Krell's death. The explosion pattern didn't match Syndicate bombs. It looked like an inside job." The revelation hit her like a blade to the chest. "You're saying someone in ISF killed him?" "I'm saying it's possible," Blackwood replied grimly. Before she could respond, the floor shook violently. A deafening explosion roared through the structure. Emergency bulkheads slammed down, sealing off corridors in a cascade of thunderous clangs. Atria's scanner screamed with alerts. "That wasn't one of the devices we found." Blackwood's comm unit crackled with static. "Signal to transport's gone." Her heart sank. "We're cut off." He met her gaze steady even amidst the chaos. "Then we're on our own." They exchanged a silent nod, mutual understanding forged in fire. The command center Atria said, her voice sharp with urgency. "If any systems still function, we can access them there." East Quadrant, 2 levels up, Blackwood confirmed, consulting his wrist display. "But with the bulkhead sealed, we'll need an alternate route." "Maintenance tunnel," she replied instantly. "Secondary access system. There should be one nearby." He gave her an approving look, and despite herself, warmth bloomed in her chest. They found the panel quickly, a section of wall that to untrained eyes seemed solid. Atria pressed a specific sequence along its surface, and with a hiss, it slid open to reveal a narrow tunnel. "Impressive," Blackwood murmured, leaning close to examine it. His breath warmed her ear through the chill. She stiffened, a shiver running down her spine for reasons that had nothing to do with the cold. "It'll be tight," she warned, forcing her voice steady. "These tunnels weren't designed for someone your size." He smiled faintly. "I'll manage." And so they crawled, Atria leading Blackwood, following the tunnel, forcing them shoulder to shoulder in suffocating closeness. His voice echoed softly in the confined space. "Your people built these?" "Yes," she replied curtly. "Lyrians are claustrophilic. We find small spaces comforting." "Humans are the opposite," he said, "though I've adapted to worse." Against her will, she almost smiled. Almost. Her scanner beeped softly. "Hold," she whispered, unusual energy signature ahead. Blackwood frowned at his own display. Not explosives. Data transmission, heavy encryption. Her stomach tightened. The starport was supposed to be abandoned. "Evidently not," he muttered. His expression hardened. "Looks like we've found their real purpose. A covert comms hub." Atria exchanged a look with him, the weight of realization heavy in the cramped space. This wasn't just about bombs anymore. It was something bigger. The maintenance tunnel spat them out onto the command level with a hiss of hydraulics as Atria pressed the final sequence on the panel. The hidden hatch slid aside, revealing a chamber that should have been dark and lifeless. Instead, the command center pulsed faintly with auxiliary power. Consoles glowed dimly, emergency lights flashed crimson, and the stale air carried the scent of ozone and scorched circuitry. They entered cautiously, weapons drawn. Atria's scanner swept the room, no immediate life signs, only the faint hum of systems still clinging to life. "Clear," Blackwood whispered, holstering his sidearm. He moved straight to the main console, fingers flying across the interface with surprising ease. "Systems are active. Someone's been using this place." Atria joined him, shoulder brushing against his as she leaned in. "These logs are recent, yesterday." "Which means Syndicate operatives are still here," Blackwood muttered grimly. He inserted a small decryption module into the console. "Let's see what they've been transmitting." For long minutes, the screen scrolled with encrypted gibberish as the device worked. The air seemed to grow heavier with every passing second. Atria scanned the room again, uneasy. "This feels wrong," she said, her voice tight. "Too easy. Why leave systems accessible?" Her words barely left her lips when the station itself seemed to answer. Klaxons blared. Red lights pulsed violently across the chamber. An automated voice droned coldly overhead. "Self-destruct sequence initiated. 15 minutes until facility purge." "Damn it," Atria cursed, gripping her weapon. "The whole command level's rigged to blow." "Almost got it," Blackwood said through clenched teeth, his focus unbroken. The decryption module beeped, and suddenly the console spat out legible data. Atria's eyes widened. "Commander Thrick!" Blackwood's expression hardened. "He's the mole." File after file displayed Thrick's transmissions, schematics, troop deployments, mission rosters fed directly to the Crimson Syndicate. The data went back years, and buried among the logs was Krell's final mission assignment, greenlit personally by Thrick. Her stomach dropped. He knew exactly where Krell and I would be. He sent us into that trap. And then Blackwood added grimly, "He requested me as your replacement. He probably hoped we'd kill each other or die here together." The realization hit like a blade. Krell's death hadn't been Syndicate luck. It had been betrayal from within ISF. The console beeped again, data successfully transferred to Blackwood's tactical unit. He yanked the device free, shoving it into a secured pouch. 14 minutes left. Atria said, her voice steel. "We need to get out." "Not out," Blackwood corrected, scanning schematics on his wrist display. "We won't make it past sealed bulkheads. But there's a reinforced maintenance hub 2 levels down, designed to survive structural collapse. If we can reach it before detonation," Atria began. "We might live long enough for rescue," he finished. Their eyes locked. No more suspicion, no more pretense. Just mutual determination. "Move," she ordered. They sprinted back to the maintenance tunnels, the Klaxons chasing them with their rhythmic scream. The crawl through the narrow passages was frantic. Dust showered them as explosions rocked the starport above. Bulkheads groaned, lights flickered, and the countdown echoed in their ears. 10 minutes until facility purge. Almost there, Atria panted, her scanner mapping the path. The hub should be just ahead. She froze abruptly, hand shooting up. Her scanner detected 3 life signs. "Syndicate operatives," she whispered. "They're already in the hub." Blackwood's jaw tightened. "They're waiting to confirm our deaths." Her pulse quickened. "It's our only chance. We take them out, we take the hub." Their eyes met, and without words they understood. They communicated through subtle gestures, precise hand signals, the kind of synchrony she thought she'd lost with Krell. But somehow in this crucible of fire and betrayal, she found it again. With him. 7 minutes until facility purge. They positioned themselves on either side of the hatch. Atria held up 3 fingers. 3, 2, 1. They burst inside. The firefight was brutal, swift, and merciless. Syndicate operatives whirled in shock weapons blazing. Blackwood's shots were surgical, each burst precise, lethal. Atria mirrored his rhythm, perfectly covering angles, eliminating threats with ruthless efficiency. When the smoke cleared, 3 bodies lay sprawled across the floor, the hub theirs. "Clear," Atria barked, checking the fallen. 5 minutes, Blackwood reminded, sealing the reinforced door. "We hold here." The hub was small, barely 10 feet square, lined with emergency supplies and reinforced walls. But it was built to withstand collapse. It was their only hope. Together, they secured loose items, braced themselves against the far wall as the countdown ticked lower. 3 minutes until facility purge. Silence pressed heavily. Atria turned to him. "If we don't make it." His eyes softened, the steel of the soldier giving way to something raw. "It's been an honor serving with you, Atria." Her breath caught. It was the first time he had used her name without rank, and something inside her cracked wide open. "I was wrong," she whispered. "About you, about humans." His lips quirked in the faintest smile, though his eyes gleamed with sincerity. "We're not so different, you and I." The klaxon blared again. 2 minutes. The imminence of death crystallized everything. No more hesitation, no more barriers. She stepped closer, her blue fingers brushing the line of his jaw. "In my culture," she murmured, voice trembling, "we believe in speaking truth before facing death." His breath quickened. And you're true. That I find you remarkable, she whispered. Your strength, your honor, your humanity. His hands found her waist, pulling her closer. Humans have a similar tradition. We don't leave things unsaid. 1 minute, and then the space between them vanished. Their lips met, tentative at first, then deepening with desperate urgency. Her cool Lyrian skin contrasted with his warmth, a shock of sensation that made her shiver. Every nerve, every heightened perception of her species blazed alive. The sound of his breathing, the feel of his heartbeat against her chest, the taste of him, it overwhelmed her senses. For the first time since Krell's death, she felt alive. 30 seconds. They broke apart, breathless, but did not release each other. If we survive this, Blackwood whispered against her ear, we'll continue this conversation. Atria managed a shaky smile. Conversation. Is that what you humans call it? His answering grin was interrupted by the final countdown. 10, 9, 8. They braced against the wall, bodies pressed together, his arms wrapped protectively around her. 3, 2, 1. The world exploded. The maintenance hub shook violently, walls groaning as the starport tore itself apart around them. Explosions cascaded in deafening succession, the entire structure collapsing under its own destruction. Dust and debris battered the reinforced chamber. Atria clung to him, her heart hammering the roar outside, drowning every thought but one: she didn't hate him anymore. She couldn't. The shaking subsided slowly, leaving only the hiss of escaping air and the pounding of her pulse. Darkness settled, broken only by the dim glow of emergency lights. Reed, she whispered. A groan answered. Here, you okay? She turned toward the sound and gasped. A section of ceiling had collapsed inside the hub, a jagged beam of metal pinning his leg. Blood seeped darkly through torn armor. Don't move, she ordered, crawling to his side. He gave a strained chuckle. Wasn't planning on it. Her scanner confirmed its severe crush injury, heavy bleeding. Beyond field treatment. We've got limited oxygen communications down, she said, forcing calm into her tone. 6 hours of breathable air at most. He nodded grimly, felt the leg, or rather, can't feel much below the knee. Not a good sign. Even wounded, he thought of the mission. The data thrick we have to secure it first. Despite everything, she smiled faintly. Priorities straight, even with a crushed leg. You humans are something else. Stubborn determination, he said, jaw tight. One of our better qualities. She retrieved his tactical unit, confirming the files were intact. Then she turned back to him, her heart hardening. Now let me see that leg. The injury was devastating. Armor crushed into flesh bone, likely shattered. She administered pain blockers, sealed the bleeding, stabilized as best she could. But it wasn't enough. Her mind raced. Then an idea struck, risky, desperate. But maybe their only chance. There's something about my species you don't know, she said softly. He raised an eyebrow even through the pain. I'm listening. Our nervous systems generate bioelectric fields. Most use them subconsciously. I trained mine for tactical applications. If I focus, I can fracture this beam. His eyes widened, a recognition dawning. That's intimate knowledge, isn't it? She nodded. Among her people, it was sacred, shared only with kin or with those closest of all. I'm honored, he said quietly. She placed her hands on either side of the beam, closing her eyes. Her skin glowed faintly light, radiating as she pushed her bioelectric field into the metal. Sweat beaded on her brow. Now she gasped. Together they shoved. The beam cracked with a sharp snap, breaking free. Blackwood bit back a cry as circulation returned, pain searing his face. Exhausted, Atria slumped against him. He wrapped an arm around her shoulders, his touch protective, despite his own agony. That was incredible, he murmured. Thank you. Her heart raced, not from exertion, but from the weight of his words. Among Lyrians, such intimacy was no small thing. She didn't answer. Instead, she leaned into him, letting the silence say what her pride would not. Outside, the starport was gone. But inside that tiny hub, something new had ignited, fragile, dangerous, and undeniable. Not just survival. Connection. Consciousness came back to Atria in fragments. First on the faint hiss of escaping air, the slow drip of condensation seeping through fractured walls. Then sensation, a sharp ache in her shoulder. The numb weight of exhaustion pressing her down. Finally, sight-dim red light flickering from a half-broken emergency lamp. She forced herself upright, every muscle protesting. Dust clung to her armor, her lungs burned from recycled air. "Reed," she croaked. A low groan answered from her right. Relief hit her like a wave. She crawled over, finding him pinned where she had last seen him, his right leg mangled beneath twisted metal. Blood seeped dark against his tactical pants, though her earlier seal had slowed it. His face was pale but resolute, jaw clenched as if daring the pain to break him. "Still alive," he muttered, eyes cracking open. "That's something." She scanned him quickly, vital signs erratic but stable. Her chest eased fractionally. "The hub held," she said, glancing around. Reinforced walls bowed but remained intact. Beyond them, sensors reported catastrophic collapse, total structural failure. They were entombed in a bubble of survival amid death. "Oxygen recyclers damaged," she added grimly. 6 hours of breathable air, maybe less. Blackwood gave a strained chuckle. Plenty of time for conversation, then. She glared at him, though the corner of her lips twitched despite herself. How could he joke now? How could he always joke at the edge of ruin? "You're losing blood," she said sharply, pressing fresh sealant over the wound. Felt that part. His voice was rough yet steady. "Can't feel much below the knee. Not ideal." She wanted to argue, to rage at the unfairness of it. Instead, she steadied her hands and focused. "I'll keep you alive. That's all that matters." His gaze softened. "You already did. You saved me back there with that gift of yours." Atria's heart stuttered. The bioelectric display. The secret she had revealed. Among her people, such intimacy was sacred, reserved for family, for chosen mates. By showing him, she had crossed a line she could never uncross. "It wasn't choice," she muttered, though her voice lacked conviction. "It was necessity." "Necessity or not," he said, eyes locked on hers, "it was the most extraordinary thing I've ever seen." She looked away quickly, afraid of what his eyes stirred in her chest. They sat in silence for a while, conserving energy, their breaths loud in the shrinking air. Dust drifted down like snow. The tactical unit pulsed faintly at Blackwood's side, the only living heartbeat of technology in the tomb. "The data," he said eventually. "Thrick's betrayal. We need to secure it." Atria retrieved the unit, confirming the files intact. "Got it." "Good," he murmured. "Because if we die here, at least someone will find the truth." "Don't," she snapped, suddenly voice fierce. "Don't talk like that. We're not dying here." He raised an eyebrow. "Optimistic for you." "Practical," she retorted. "I refuse to let Krell's death mean nothing, and I refuse to let yours join it." Something flickered in his eyes, surprise, then warmth. After an hour of silence, Atria found her thoughts spiraling. Krell's ghost pressed on her mind, memories of their missions, the perfect synchronization they'd once shared. She had believed no one could replace him, that no one should. And yet here in this wreckage, she sat beside a human who had already saved her life twice. A human who, despite his injuries, radiated a calm resilience that steadied her own fear. Was she betraying Krell by feeling this connection? Or honoring him by surviving, by moving forward? Her heart ached with confusion. She pushed it aside, focusing on tasks. Blackwood broke the silence. "Emergency beacons. Destroyed," she said flatly, gesturing to the shattered locker. He nodded, lips pressed thin. "Then we improvise." He tapped the tactical unit. "It emits an encrypted ISF signal with the data. If we can amplify it, it'll serve as a homing beacon." Her eyes narrowed. "Boosting output will drain remaining power, accelerate oxygen depletion. Better to risk 2 hours of air with a chance of rescue," he said, "than 6 hours with none." He wasn't wrong. Damn him, he was never wrong. She hesitated, then nodded. "We'd need to reroute through surviving power cells. Maybe." She trailed off, realization dawning. His gaze sharpened. "Your bioelectric field." She froze. It could interface with the unit he pressed, boost the signal. That's not what it was meant for. First time for everything. He gave that maddening half-smile again, even bloodied and broken. Her throat tightened. "If I overload, the data could fry. Or worse. I trust you." 2 words. Simple. But they hit harder than any oath, heavier than any order. Her chest tightened painfully. She swallowed, then set to work. They stripped wires, spliced circuits, rigged what remained of the hub's power into the unit. A crude contraption, barely stable. Atria crouched before it, hands trembling. "Steady," Blackwood murmured, covering her hands with his own. "Breathe, focus." His touch anchored her. She closed her eyes, extended her bioelectric field. Her palms glowed faintly as energy flowed into the device. Circuits hummed, lights flickered, signal strength climbing. "It's working," she whispered. The unit thrummed with life beacon pulsing out into the void. Hope surged through her chest until her scanner beeped urgently. "Oxygen depletion accelerating," she muttered. "We've cut ourselves down to 2 hours." "That's enough," Blackwood said firmly. "If anyone's looking, they'll find us." Her hands trembled as the glow faded. He squeezed them gently. "You did it." Exhausted, she leaned back against him. His arm wrapped around her, instinctively pulling her close. For a long moment, neither spoke. The world outside was gone. Only the two of them remained huddled in a fragile bubble of survival hearts beating against the silence. Minutes bled into hours. The air grew thinner, each breath shallower, heavier. Dust shifted as faint rumbling echoed in the distance, either collapse or rescue. Atria found herself watching him more than her scanner. His face, pale but steady, bore lines of pain and resilience. The scar above his brow, the stubble shadowing his jaw, the laugh lines around his eyes. She memorized them all, afraid she might not have another chance. "Tell me about Earth," she whispered suddenly. His eyes flicked to hers, surprised. Then he smiled faintly. "Oceans that stretch farther than sight, mountains capped in white, forests so dense the sun barely touches the ground." His voice carried her away, painting vivid pictures she could almost see. For the first time in hours, she felt peace. "If these are my last moments," she said softly, "I'm glad they're spent with you." Silence hung. Then his hand brushed her hair back, gently, an intimate gesture that among Lyrians was reserved only for family or lovers. Her breath caught. "Atria," he murmured, "if we don't." She silenced him with a kiss. It wasn't desperation this time, nor urgency. It was quiet, gentle, full of the things neither dared say aloud. Her cool skin against his warmth, the taste of iron and dust mingling with something achingly human. When she pulled back, she whispered against his lips, "We're going to make it. And when we do, Thrick will pay." As if the universe heard a faint beam of light pierce the rubble above. Voices shouted through the dust. Metal shifted as debris was hauled away. In here, Blackwood called his voice raw but strong. 2 ISF officers, 1 injured. Rescue had come. Atria gripped his hand tightly, refusing to let go as the rubble gave way. They had survived the impossible, but survival was only the beginning. The medical bay of Orion 4 hummed with quiet precision. Monitors blinked with soft light, the air sharp with antiseptic. Atria sat rigid beside Blackwood's bed, her arms folded across her chest, as though she could shield herself from the vulnerability that gnawed at her. 3 days had passed since the rescue. Blackwood's leg now floated inside a regenerative field, healing at a rate only human medicine could achieve. Despite the damage, the prognosis was full recovery. Of course, he treated the injury with the same insufferable stubbornness he treated everything else, brushing aside the pain, joking with medics, pretending he wasn't mortal. "You don't have to keep watching me," he said, voice low but tinged with amusement. His eyes sparkled despite the exhaustion. "The doctors say I'll be fine." "I'm not here because I'm worried," Atria replied quickly. Too quickly. Both of them knew it wasn't true. "We need to finalize our strategy for Thrick." His smirk softened. "Right. Priorities." The truth was she had barely left his side. Not because of duty, but because she couldn't bear the thought of him waking in pain and finding no one there. She justified it with logic, security, tactical planning, but her heart betrayed her. The door hissed open. A delegation entered, Lyrian officials in ceremonial robes, their faces stern, eyes sharp. Atria stiffened, recognizing the lead figure, Counselor Merrick, her mother's cousin, a senior diplomat from the Lyrian embassy. Lieutenant Commander Merrick said, bowing his head with stiff formality, "We must speak privately." Atria rose reluctantly, glancing back at Blackwood. He gave her hand a reassuring squeeze before she followed the delegation into the consultation room. The moment the door closed, Merrick spoke bluntly, "Your association with the human has caused concern among our people. Rumors of your closeness have reached diplomatic channels. My personal relationships are not subject to diplomatic oversight," Atria replied coldly. "They are," another counselor interjected, "when they involve sacred biological knowledge. The bioelectric gift is not to be revealed to outsiders." So they knew. She had expected this confrontation, but not so soon. I made a tactical decision, she said evenly, one that saved both our lives and secured critical intelligence. Perhaps Merrick conceded, but traditions are not so easily dismissed. Our people have guarded these secrets for millennia. Then perhaps it is time they evolve, Atria snapped. Humans have proven themselves as allies. Commander Blackwood has demonstrated loyalty, sacrifice, and honor that would impress even the most rigid Lyrian. The counselors exchanged uneasy glances. Finally, Merrick delivered the order. The High Council requests your immediate return to the homeworld for evaluation and reassignment. Your judgment regarding humans is considered compromised. Atria's blood boiled. I decline. This is not a request, Merrick pressed. It comes from the highest authority. She straightened her voice like steel. Then they can speak to me directly after I complete my mission. Until then, I have unfinished business with a traitor who murdered my partner. The discussion ended there. She turned on her heel and walked back to Blackwood, her fury burning brighter than the council's disapproval. They want to drag you home, don't they? He asked quietly as she returned. She blinked. You heard? Enhanced human hearing, he said with a faint grin. One more thing your people don't appreciate. Despite herself, she smiled. They'll have to get used to it. His expression sobered. Atria, I don't want to come between you and your people. You're not, she said firmly, taking his hand. You are helping me show them a better way forward. But first we deal with Thrick. The next morning, Orion 4 held a memorial service, ironically, for Atria and Blackwood. The ceremonial hall was filled with officers' banners and solemn faces. Commander Thrick stood at the podium, reptilian features arranged into a mask of dignified grief. Lieutenant Commander Atria and Commander Blackwood exemplified the finest traditions of the interstellar special forces, he intoned gravely. Their sacrifice will not be forgotten. The words curdled in Atria's ears. She and Blackwood stood hidden in a side chamber, waiting for Captain Dorn's signal. And then there it was, a subtle nod from the captain. They stepped into the hall together. Gasps rippled through the assembly. Officers turned eyes-wide, murmurs swelling into a wave of shock. Thrick froze mid-sentence, his mask cracking for the briefest instant before snapping back into place. A miracle, he managed. We believed you perished in your trap, Atria cut in her voice, carrying clear and sharp across the chamber. Just as Krell was meant to die on that smuggler vessel. Blackwood stepped forward, tactical unit in hand. Commander Thrick, you are charged with treason, conspiracy with the Crimson Syndicate, and the murder of ISF operatives. Panic flickered in Thrick's eyes. He darted toward a nearby officer, seizing her sidearm with surprising speed. The room erupted in chaos. Blaster fire cracked. Without hesitation, Blackwood moved. Despite the regenerative brace still on his leg, he threw himself between Thrick and Atria. 2 shots slammed into his shoulder and arm, but he didn't falter. He tackled Thrick with brutal efficiency, wrenching the weapon away and pinning him to the floor. Security swarmed, subduing the traitor. Medics rushed toward Blackwood. You took those shots for me, Atria whispered, kneeling at his side as blood seeped from his wounds. He gave her that maddening half-smile, lips pale, but eyes fierce. Seemed like the thing to do. Besides, I've been told I heal remarkably fast. You impossible human, she muttered, tears pricking her eyes. She didn't care who saw. Thrick's capture unraveled a web of treachery. His confession, forced under interrogation, implicated several Syndicate collaborators across ISF. Captain Dorn led the purge personally, rooting out the corruption. For Atria and Blackwood, the aftermath was quieter, but no less profound. 2 weeks later, they stood once more in Dorn's office side by side. The Lyrian High Council has withdrawn their reassignment request, the captain informed them, his tone dry. Apparently, your actions have sparked debate about interspecies cooperation. Atria allowed herself a small smile. Progress, however, fragile. There's more, Dorn continued. ISF Command is establishing a new cross-species tactical unit. They want the 2 of you to lead it. Blackwood exchanged a glance with her, his eyes gleaming. Together they said, we accept. Good, Dorn said, his reptilian lips curving faintly. Because I already told them you would. Dismissed, they left the office together, the weight of their future pressing in. In the corridor, Blackwood pulled her gently into a quiet alcove. His hands rested lightly at her waist, his eyes steady on hers. Partners, he said softly, officially and unofficially. His words carried more than professional meaning. A question, a vow. Atria lifted a hand, tracing the line of his jaw, marveling at how quickly this impossible human had dismantled her defenses and claimed her heart. Among my people, she whispered, there is a tradition when we choose a life partner. We say my current flows with yours. It means our lives, our energies, our futures are intertwined, inseparable. His eyes shone, full of understanding and something deeper. Then my current flows with yours, Atria, always. Their lips met, not desperate this time, but full of promise of survival, of justice, of love, found where it had no right to exist. And as she held him close, Atria reflected on the irony. She had lost her alien partner and hated the human who replaced him, until that human saved her life and gave her something far more precious. Not just survival, but a love strong enough to bridge the stars.